Well, it's real cold and windy outside, so today would be a good day to refurbish, clean, and re-lube some of my reels that I use all the time. So today I'm going to do a quick breakdown and re-lubing and cleaning of a Penn Battle 2 reel. Alright, well, after using a couple reels that I recently purchased, newer reels, I realized just how bad my Penn Battle 2s are in need of maintenance. So I'm going to break this whole reel down, clean it, and go through all the steps with you. First thing I'm going to want to do is I'm going to want to take off the handle assembly. So there's just a cover plate on the back side. And we just unscrew the whole handle assembly. And when I do this, I like to do this inside of a cardboard box and take it all apart and lay it out as the pieces come out. Next thing we'll do is we'll loosen our drag all the way and take our spool off. And then you want to make sure these bearings come off in the bottom of the spool and you don't lose them. So there's our drag assembly, and here's our bearings and washers. And we'll put them back inside the bottom of the reel the order they came out. And that's why I do it inside of a box, because you will drop and lose pieces if you don't. So there's all of our bearings back in the bottom of our spool, so we won't lose them. Next thing we have is our drag clicker. We take it off. Then there's a little screw holding the bail hold down nut plate on. We'll take our screw out. Take our little bail hold down plate out. Lay it all out in order it came out, and this is an 11mm nut holding the bail assembly down. We'll take the complete bail assembly off, and all these parts will be cleaned individually. Then there's 3 screws holding the anti-reverse mechanism in. We'll take the 3 of those out. Once again, like I say, that's why I use a box. You're going to drop screws. All 3 of these anti-reverse mechanism screws are the same length, so you don't have to worry about that. Then we'll lift this whole anti-reverse mechanism out all in one piece. So we'll take the top retaining plate. There's a bearing, a spring, and a plastic Teflon retaining plate, and the whole bearing assembly. We're going to want to take all that out as one, along with the pinion. So the whole thing came out as one entire assembly. I'll break it down and clean it all and show you the anti-reverse bearings in there in a few moments. So once we did that, we'll open up the 3 side plate screws. Once again, these are all the same length. And they do have a little Teflon looking washer on them. It's almost hard to see because it's clear. Once again, I just dropped the screw. I'll have to find it. I heard it. I don't know where it went though. So once we take our 3 side plate screws out, we got to remove this little abrasion end cap on the back. Screws off, caps off. And that'll allow your side plate to come off. I'll take a real fine screwdriver here. Once you got the side plate off, you can see how dirty and greasy this reel is. It really needs to be cleaned. So side plate's off. We'll lift out this one bearing first. Bearings off the pinion gear. So once we have that bearing off to where we don't lose it, we'll go ahead and loosen up this screw in the back here that's holding the main shaft oscillating assembly together. And you see by doing that, the main shaft comes straight out the front. You can see how dirty and greasy it is. Then we can lift the bearing right, the pinion gear right out. And these other parts will come right out. That's what controls the oscillating of the reel. Then you got this little idler gear. And we'll clean all this up to where we can see real good in here and see what all needs to be done to put this reel back together. Okay, so for this pinion assembly, there's a bunch of roller bearings underneath this collar here. So what I'll do is, over the top of the box, I'll take this top assembly off that's got the plastic and a bearing right there. I'll set that aside as assembly. I'll take the top off. You can see those roller bearings in there. They all want to fall out. I'll take the inner bushing out. And I'll take this bottom bearing off. I'm going to clean all these parts in gasoline. I don't like to clean the bearings in gasoline though. So inside this pinion, there's a little Teflon washer in the very top of it. You want to make sure you don't lose that. So we'll take and we'll push it out if we can. See that little Teflon washer right there goes in the very top of the pinion. And then we got this roller bearing cage. There's 6 roller bearings that go in there, or needle bearings, whatever you want to call them. This little housing has some rust on it. I'm going to have to polish off. This is the anti-reverse housing. It's octagon shaped inside, so it lets those roller bearings go one direction and it stops them going the other direction. And this is the inside race that those roller bearings ride on. A little bit of tarnishing on there, but nothing bad. Let's see if these bearings are magnetic so I can get them all out of there. 1, 2, so you can see these little roller bearings that are in there. And what we'll do is when we go to reassemble this, we'll put them together with grease to hold them in the cage as we get all the pieces together. Okay, I've cleaned all the old parts off real good, and I'm going to re-grease them. I got some Abu Garcia Real Lube with PTFE. I got a big tub of Penn Lube somewhere, and I can't find it, of course. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to put a little bit of grease in the bottom of the body where the idler gear rides. Kind of cold. I guess the grease don't want to cooperate. So I'll put a little bit of grease in the bottom of the body there, and this idler gear drops in with this little stub shaft up. So once I got that in, I'm going to take the oscillating arm, and that's where that stub shaft rides, in that groove. I'll put a little bit of grease in that groove. It's going to go behind here. And over that little stub shaft. I'm going to put a little bit of grease on the back side of this bearing here. So once I got the bearing surface, the idler gear, and the main pinion gear lubed up, I'll drop this in the body to where it intersects with that idler gear. You can see now the whole thing's turning. Then I'll take my main shaft. I'll put a little bit of lube on it. Lube the whole thing up. I'll go in through the front of the reel. There's a guide plate in there it's got to go through. And I'll come here and I'll go inside this idler shaft, and then I'll go ahead and put my locking retaining screw in. And this is why I like to do this over a box, because you will drop these screws. I found the one I dropped earlier. It was right down by my feet. It bounced out the box and hit the ground. And that screw still had a little bit of blue Loctite on it from the factory. So once I got that on and my main shaft in, I'm going to go ahead and put a little bit of lube on the back side of this gear for this bearing that rides on it. And you can see this bearing also has a little bushing that'll ride against the housing. It's actually got two little thin shims. Make sure I get both of them on there. Put a little dab of glue on the back side. Put a little bit of grease on the back side of it. Now I can actually take my housing body and slide it in and put it on. So I'll take my 3 body screws, get all them started. And these 3 screws are all the same length, so you don't have to worry about one bottom them out. Okay, once those 3 screws are in, I'll give them all a slight torque. You don't have to go too much. You don't want to strip the body or anything. All right. Okay, we'll lube up our main pinion gear. Then we'll put, there's a little brass washer. Trying to get it on there. And the pinion bearing that goes on top of that washer. So once we got our bearing on, we put our little inner race on there. This is what the anti-reverse will ride against. We slip our outer cage over the top of that. And then with a little bit of grease in here, we can install these bearings into that cage. Just enough grease to hold them in there. Once we get the 6 bearings placed in the cage, we go ahead and put the outer race over the top of it and slide it down. You can see that's our whole anti-reverse assembly together. So when this assembly's together, I'll put a little lube on the pinion gear. I'll drop it down in through the front over the main shaft. Try to get it to seat down in there. So there, the whole thing just dropped in and seated. Everything stayed together. So once that's all on there, I'll put a little more lube on the main shaft here. And the pinion gear exterior. I'll go ahead and slide this Teflon bushing back down into the end of the pinion. Get it all into place. Once that's all assembled, we can drop in the whole anti-reverse assembly as one unit. And this plastic piece has to drop down over the top of the cage. Just like that. Get a couple of these screws started. If your anti-reverse ever quits working, it's usually because this spring has come off the little pawl on it. That holds tension on that dark green roller bearing cage, pulls it to where it engages the anti-reverse whenever you're reeling. And just like the exterior body screws, we don't really need to massively torque these down. Just a light tighten will do all you need. Make sure that that pawl is over that catch, just like that. See right there, that takes the tension off to where those bearings can roll free, and that locks it to where you have an anti-reverse. So at this point in time, we can put this little rear protector plastic piece on. Alrighty. So once that's on, we can go ahead and reinstall our bail, and I cleaned all underneath here. I'll put a little bit more grease on this pinion where the bail rides. I'll go ahead and drop my bail on. And I'll go ahead and put my retaining nut down on there. So once I got my retaining nut on, I'll need the handle to be able to tighten it down. So put the handle on, and then you can take and tighten down your bail retaining nut. Seems pretty smooth. Then we can take and put our bail retaining plate on. And once again, another small screw to deal with. Oh, she feels nice and smooth. We'll go ahead and put our drag washer on. Drop our spool back over the top. Put a drag adjuster on. It's that easy. Boy, smooth like new. Test everything out. Make sure our anti-reverse works. So anti-reverse is locking. See with it off. And always use them locked. It's that simple to clean and re-lube a Penn Battle 2 reel. The Fierce 2s are real similar, almost the exact same reel. Now let's do the other 15 or 20 reels I got in here. Till the next video, get out there and go fishing.